let's talk a little bit about how we analyze the world. I think it's very common for people to misunderstand the nature of the way information is given around us, right? The title of this program is, Experts, Fools, and the Generals of Hell. And we're going to talk a little bit about Bill Cosby. I don't know if Based Franklin over there knows who Bill Cosby is.
I know who Bill Cosby is.
Did you ever watch The Cosby Show?
I've heard of his allegations, but I've never watched The Cosby Show.
Okay, so we're actually going to talk about the allegations because that comes into this. Then we're going to talk a little bit about Andrew Tate. You do know who that is, yes? And then we're going to talk about the Generals of Hell, whom I hope you don't know who they are. We might be able to talk about Beelzebub Moloch or something like that, but I hope you're not on any personal level with that. And if so, then we're going to have to get the pyre ready out back. Anyways, thank you for joining us. We're here at Kingdom of the Logos. I'm Pastor J. Dylan Proctor, and as I said, Based Frankie is here in the studio.
Why do you calling me that, Based Frankie?
Are you not based?
Well, I am based, but you don't have to. That's like me calling you White Dylan.
Okay. Hey, we need to emphasize how good it is to be based, and I use the word good properly. So, you can't be upset about that.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. I almost set you up to be in a trap where you said you weren't based. Anyways, analyzing the world around us. We look at the world and clearly there's a problem where people trust the experts. Like you hear this phrase, you've seen a lot of people over the last few years say, trust the experts. A big problem in the church has been this idea that the expert class is very serious and they have a furrowed brow. You can't question them. And if you're going to be a good Christian, you need to be civil and interested in peace. Be interested in peace over truth, by the way, which means going along with lies and things like that. You need to make sure that everything has a measured tone. But there's been this excessive emphasis on trusting the experts. These people have credentials, titles, letters after the name, therefore they've got to know what they're talking about. But it's very obviously not true. Like it's incredibly obviously not true, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. Some of the stuff they say is pretty whack.
It's pretty whack, right. And from the logical perspective, we look at it and say, well, this week they told us to do this. The next week they told us to do that. And again, you saw this with a lot of the response with the virus, which is not to be named, one, because it is the Princeps Elector chosen by demons, but also because trying not to get banned off YouTube. The virus which shall not be named, you saw the expert class flip and flop. And we would like to say that that's inconsistent, right?
Well, how did the expert class flip and flop? Because I don't really know too much about that.
Okay, so like 1 week they would say you need to put this on your face because it works. The next week they would say, well, it doesn't work. Actually, very early on, the New England Journal of Medicine, this was like May of 2020, put out an article talking about how they had never worked, the things that you put over your face, and as far as spreading or stopping the spread of respiratory viruses. And they even put in the New England Journal of Medicine that it was a talisman, like a witchcraft, rabbit's foot. Like we know it doesn't work, but it'll make people happy and make people feel safe. So we're going to push it on them. Like they were very open that this is not a sincere thing. It's very much a virtue signal, a sign of things. And in the church and throughout the world, there was a lot of people who said, well, trust the experts. They're telling us to do this. A couple of weeks later, you would have someone come out like Redfield, who's the head of the CDC, say something like, this mask works better than like getting a shot. And then they would come out and say, no, the shot works better. Like there was flip-flopping. You would hear this is effective, this is not effective. It's very common in 2020. And it was very hard to pin any of it down. And we look at that and say it's inconsistent. But you got to understand things from the perspective of a general in the army of hell. And that's where that bit of that title comes from. If you're a general in the army of hell, being able to deflect and weasel out of truth actually makes you very, very consistent. And you actually will find this just about all the expert classes, even within the church. Like the whole heresy that's come in of social justice, which is incredibly materialistic. Like it looks at materialistic markers about how much income people have, representation and stuff like that. All of that's materialistic, right? You can give somebody great representation and everybody that's of that category goes home, they're miserable, they're sinful, they're in line to end up in hell, and they can't sleep at night because their lives are suffering. Like representation doesn't actually bring people happiness, nor does it even help them in the course of righteousness and coming to the Lord and deliverance from sin. Right? A lot of this stuff is very materialistic in its application, and it destroys everything it touches. Like wokeness pretty much kills anything it touches. Like you can look at this and see, You're over there laughing about it.
I am.
So I know there's some other thoughts you have on that. Wokeness kills everything that it touches. The social justice stuff, it rots out everything it touches.
It also kills the budget of a lot of Hollywood and Disney. Like, you ever heard the saying, go woke, go broke?
Yeah. But here's the thing. If you think about this from the army of hell, flip the script. Like, again, an expert that you can't pin down, you can't get to admit they're wrong. If your goal is the destruction of everything, and again, real evil is not just motivated by power, money, and manipulation. It's actually motivated by destruction, chaos, the void. A company that is bought into the spirit of the age, or a church that's bought into that, the fact that they bleed money is not a problem. You've now desecrated the name of Disney. You know, Disney, something, and you can debate whether or not it was actually a high quality, that's beside the point. But it endeared people to fairy tales, things that actually had some higher virtues and morals in it. Yes, there was some subversive things always worked into it one way or another. But you went from telling stories of good and evil, of heroes versus villains, to now kind of utterly woke, you know, degenerate propaganda. And they don't care. They don't care that they're losing money, because that if you're a general in hell, you want Disney to go down. You're not looking at it from the perspective of the Christian in Sunday school who says, well, you know, I kind of want my kids to watch something like The Lion King, but I'm a little unsure about Timon and Pumbaa. And since they don't overtly have Christian values, maybe it's not really Christian. A general in hell doesn't even think like that. If you're in the army of hell, you don't care. Well, first of all, you got to keep in mind, the demons in hell don't know who is saved and who isn't saved. And the demons in hell aren't looking at Disney and asking whether or not it has the complete truth of, say, Christ together. They're looking at that and saying, is this awakening any truth in people? Like, you might look at The Lion King and it has the truth of heroism in there. Well, we don't want that. It may not be perfect. It may not save a soul, but it does still move souls upwards towards God. So we want the name of Disney dead and gone completely. We want to soil your heroes. We want to soil your heritage. And that's actually where I want to go to talk about Bill Cosby and kind of Andrew Tate a little bit. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to all of that, Frankie. Are you kind of tracking with what I'm saying here? Am I even making sense?
You're kind of making sense, but soiling your heroes and soiling your heritage, I know like a lot of young guys look up to Andrew Tate, and he's in prison now. And over and over and over again, the media soils him.
Yep.
And takes his words out of context because he promotes things that move men and women up to higher causes.
Right.
And it goes against what they're trying to push on people.
That's right. You got to understand, life is a battle of light and dark. And so let's go back to Bill Cosby for a moment, because you're familiar with the allegations, right?
Yeah.
That came out, and he's gone. He's been arrested, convicted. All that stuff's happened. He's gone through the court system.
I actually think he's out of jail now.
Yeah, he may be. I don't know. But back when the Cosby Show was kind of at its height, you can kind of go back to like pop culture, 1980s, 1990s. The Cosby Show was not just an example of a good father, because it was kind of a staple of good fatherhood in America, not just to say a black family, but kind of to all families. Well, the spirit of the age hates that. You know, all the people that are interested in social justice, it's interesting, they don't talk about fatherhood. In fact, they're very big into blurring the lines between men and women. They're very big into encouraging women to be single and to pursue, historically male jobs and act like that's somehow justice. People are not happy. Those meaning is not found in having a job that may have been historically, occupied by men. And of course, all of these things are very limited. They don't want, people to go out and do construction work or anything like that. There's the obvious flaws. But that's actually not where meaning is anyway. Meaning is found in being right with God, having a family, pursuing what is good, true, and beautiful, being able to sleep at night, being able to have a heritage and a good name that lasts beyond your lifetime. That's not just found in a job within your lifetime. And if you were really interested in like social justice, you would want to have a role model like Bill Cosby and the Cosby Show as fatherhood. And that would actually help those minorities, like aspiring to fatherhood, not necessarily a TV show. Again, it actually takes more than a TV show, but you would want fatherhood repaired. These people aren't into that. And you can bet your money that the generals in hell aren't into that either. So whether or not the Cosby Show is actually Christian doesn't even matter in the sense that a Christian might think. But if you're in hell, you want to tear that down because it might awaken truth. It might make fatherhood look desirable. It might make the family look desirable, and you do not want that. So the man Bill Cosby himself needs to be destroyed. If you have to get him on fake allegations, so be it. He goes down. If you can get him on real accusations, like you can actually tempt the man to do sinful things. And again, you're a demon, so you do temptations. Like you want to tempt that figure down so that you can destroy fatherhood and you can take that off the table. Like it actually doesn't matter in the army of hell whether he's guilty or not. That's a secondary point. It's better if he's guilty, if he really does the things. But as long as you can take him off the table, as long as you can discredit fatherhood, that is the victor you're after. Do you follow what I'm saying there, Frankie?
Well, I have no idea what the Bill Cosby Show is. I've never watched it ever. So how does that relate to fatherhood for someone who has no idea?
It's basically a sitcom of a family, and Bill Cosby's the dad. So you've got all these kids. It's just a family situation of a family. Dad being a good dad, giving people hard lessons, correcting people, giving wisdom, that sort of thing. Now dads are generally buffoons in TV shows, right?
Oh, yeah,
that become
like
in
Rick
the
and
90s.
Morty.
Yeah.
Have you watched Rick and Morty?
Yeah, Rick and Morty's a great example of that.
Jerry is just an idiot.
Yep, Jerry's an idiot. You'll find that. That's in just about every TV show you see.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot.
And that's okay to put in there. Even when you look at the Matrix movies, they took the character Morpheus, who was a strong male figure, and they replaced him in the new movie with a guy that's all style, no quality of character, utter trash. And again, a lot of people in their Sunday school kind of mindset, they would think, well, these things aren't overtly Christian. Why would the devil attack them? The devil is against truth. And while those characters were not overtly Christian, they didn't have the full truth, they still were pointing people back to the truth of things that God designed, like fatherhood, being a strong man. And the devil in hell wants to get rid of that because it's necessary to destroy societies. It's necessary to the destruction of generations. And when you get societies and generations destroyed, you also get lost souls that are going to end up in hell. And that's the whole game that he has there, to demoralize people.
A lot of bringing people away from the truth is in these modern TV shows and movies. You'll have this super mom that just does everything, like the mom that parents the children. She goes and takes out the bad guys and goes to work, and she does it all. And that's not to say that the mom is bad or anything like that, but realistically, a mother just can't do all that and raise her children to be, boys especially, to be men.
Right. And what's funny is actually raising your children is actually the great virtue, right? Like we have lost the virtue of actually motherhood in all this. Like in this conversation, people have soiled. I hate seeing people do eulogies and be like, and they almost apologize from the pulpit. They'll be like, well, she was a stay-at-home mom. Like somehow that's degrading. Like, are you kidding? God gave you the opportunity, you as a woman, as a mother, to bring into existence one of the eternal souls that he created, and you to raise it, to give it a name. Like, why in the world we would want to degrade that or mock that in the modern world is utterly insane. It's one of the most wicked, sinful things that happens that is utterly shaking its fist at God. Like, being a mom is a full-time job, right? Raising kids, even being a dad, like, that is a full-time life commitment that is going to utterly rewrite the trajectory of your life. And to degrade that is insane. But you're right, the propaganda is everywhere. And it's an anti-God propaganda. It's not just a changing in cultures. It's not just a shift. All of that is silly and ridiculous and ignorant. It's an anti-God movement. So going from Bill Cosby to Andrew Tate. Like, I believe Andrew Tate actually claims to be a Muslim.
He does.
Okay.
That's true.
He converted to Islam though, right? He's not like someone who's got that as a heritage.
Yeah.
And so Andrew Tate doesn't have everything correct. Even his character is a little edgy and brash and stuff like that, right? But again, if you're a demon in hell, Andrew Tate is sitting down young men and young women and saying things like, you want to live this sexually degenerate lifestyle where you're not going to have kids, or you're going to choose this career where you don't have kids, you're going to throw away everything your ancestors suffered and bled and died for just so you can live a life of pleasure, right? That's kind of his message, generally, one way or another.
Yeah, that's right.
A demon in hell does not want young people to hear that. First of all, the demons don't know if Andrew Tate actually believes it or not. Well, maybe they know that, but that's beside the point. Even though he may be damned to hell himself for rejecting Jesus Christ, he is still telling something that may prompt other people to seek the truth, right? A broken clock is right twice a day, and if you're the demon in hell, you don't even want a broken clock. You don't want something that's even right twice a day. And you've got to have that removed off the table. And it's really funny, you see these male figures the world comes after pretty hard, even though they are wrong themselves in a lot of other ways. And I'm not taking up for Andrew Tate or Bill Cosby. Again, it's really a shame that the church is not able to put better role models out there, how we've become so cowardly and feeble that we can't actually tell the truth of masculinity and femininity, that it takes an 80s sitcom to show you fatherhood, or it takes the guy who's converted to Islam to sit people down and say, don't throw your life away for pleasure. Like we've missed, basic things out of Scripture. That's Ecclesiastes 7:1 even saying, a good name is better than pleasing ointment, because at the end of your days, it's worth more. When you're dead and in the grave, having a good name that meant something, not because of the letters after it, not because of the credentials, having a name that meant something is worth more than you just pleasing yourself all day. And if you're a demon in hell, you really want to throw that away. You want to make sure those voices are off the table, not because they're totally successful in leading people to Christ, but because they're at least turning people upwards. Again, I'm not a universalist. Unless you know the name of Jesus Christ, there is no other salvation. And I'm not saying that people out there just by goodwill are going to be saved, but the demons in hell, they don't want any truth on the table, even if it's a fool accidentally saying the truth, or someone who's lost pursuing the truth and accidentally lets it out. They do not want any truth out there. They want as much falsehood out there as possible.
That reminds me of this one quote. It had something to do with the CIA, and maybe it had something to do with the CIA, but it said, you'll know when our disinformation mission is complete when there's everything the American public believes is a lie.
Oh, yeah.
Something along the lines of that.
Yeah.
How did that exactly go? I can't remember.
One of the early figures, I don't remember what his name was. I think he was a CIA director early on, maybe the first one, had said, you'll know our disinformation campaigns are complete when everything the American public believes is a lie. And what's so funny to me is humanity's most natural skill, their natural instinct is to avoid accountability, to be dismissive. People dismiss stuff like that, like, oh, that's he funny. He doesn't really mean it. Yeah, they do mean it. The demons in hell mean it. The liars, the schemers, they mean it. Sin is real, folks. Evil is real. And there's a spirit trying to corrupt everything around you. And right now we've got to this place where unless you're part of that central hub of information, the television, the media, the newspapers, they're all from the same companies. They're all from the same spirit. And it's not an earthly spirit. It is a hellish spirit. And the amount of people who want to insist that it's not serious, that the CIA director doesn't really mean that. They're not actually trying to make everybody believe lies. It's just utterly insane.
Well, most people don't even know that the CIA director said that.
Right, that's true. Right.
They have no idea, and they can just go look it up.
Yep.
They can request any documents they want because of the Freedom of Information Act.
Yeah. Which are, you might get them redacted, right? You might get one with Sharpie blacked out half the stuff on it, but when you got to understand the Luciferian intellect, the intelligence of the devil is here for destruction. He's not here to play according to your Sunday school rules. He's not here to play according to your comfortable Christianity. He is here to unmake everything that the Lord God has made. And he's a loser. He's actually a wimpy, effeminate, fallen angel loser. And in the end, Christ smites him, not by negotiation, not with a nice tone, but with a sword. It's a snap of a finger. You can go and read, go read Revelation 19 and 20. You don't even get a full verse of this great battle at the end. In fact, it's a snap of the finger, Christ wins. In the end, that is what destroys him. But he's petty. He's here to bag and tag souls, and he doesn't really know, but he's here, and he knows that all things of chaos, all things of falsehood win. And we're really, really bad in the modern day and age at actually recognizing the spirit of the age, oftentimes because we have magic rules like the experts must be smart. Like, this guy's been teaching this for 50 years and he's had all these people talk to him and he's got all these credentials, like he's got to be smart, when in fact, no, he may live in such a profound bubble, a fortress of invincible ignorance, that don't hear a single word that comes out of there. And it's amazing. There's a lot of people who are really aware of this, and then there's so many people who demand that we take the official, expert class serious. What else is on your mind, Frankie?
Well, just taking the official expert class serious, I think that plays into a lot of how school treats you and conditions you, because you're just told to listen to what the teacher says and write on this packet, turn the packet, and the teacher can't possibly be wrong.
Right.
And that plays into how people function in their lives after high school and college.
Sure.
And people want someone to tell them what to do. They don't want to go find knowledge themselves.
Right.
They just want to have someone tell them the way it is and how to live. And that's why people don't start their own businesses and work 9-to-5 jobs all the time, because it's way easier just to go in
it's a lot easier, yeah,
mindlessly work, and as someone tells you what to do, than to go start your own business or do something that actually fulfills you.
Yeah. And so there's a couple of things with that. One, really of any age, but especially as a youth, you actually need somebody to guide you in wisdom, right? You actually need that. So what happens when all the sources of wisdom are corrupt? Like, that's a big problem. I'm not rooting for the expert class to be an utter failure. It's just an observation. I'm not rooting for all the shiny-browed, shiny-credentialed people who come to give their seminars in, denominations, at church meetings, to be utterly filled with gibberish and nonsense. I'm not rooting for that, but it's just a fact that is true. Like, the less we're willing to speak truth, the more that we're pursuing, unity and peace without having truth connected to that, the more we're in an utterly rotten place. When it comes to, say, how people are raised, this idea of blindly trusting people, like, there's an element of that where it's kind of true, because, like, you do need to be able to trust your parents, because your parents understand things you don't. Your parents, the elders around you, they understand about things in the world but you haven't seen yet, and maybe you hope that you don't have to see. They've dealt with death, they've dealt with hardship, they've dealt with struggles, they've matured, and you need to be able to receive that from older people. But what happens when sin is then entered into the equation? And if you're not constantly confronting sin, it will override everything else. If you're not constantly confronting errors, meaning even innocent mistakes, they will become the overriding fault. I work on a lot of diesel engines. The hard part about a diesel engine is to make it start. And if you do not address the minuscule problems that happen when putting back the diesel engine, maybe it's a bad O-ring and injector, maybe it's something simple like the wire that hooks up the glow plugs isn't connected, the engine will not start. The fault, the issue, the error, accidental or willful, will become the overriding problem. Like the original definition of sin, missing the mark, it doesn't even spend that much time worrying about how much you thought about that missing the mark. Maybe it was an impulsive sin. Maybe it was a long planned out sin. Maybe it was just I was wise in my own eyes and didn't realize what I was doing. But when the whole world is now given over to evil and you've got the spirit of the age, you do have this problem where the purpose of the training throughout life, right, even when you're an adult in the field, is to make you compliant with the phony expert class, to make you compliant with the masters who will tell you what to do so you don't have to think for yourself. And God didn't make you to function that way, right? Like man is given the spirit radah. Like you do have a certain level of autonomy, there is certain structures and hierarchies in life. You have, nations with kings. You have men who are head over the household. You have judges over tens and hundreds. But the judge is not supposed to dictate everything in your life. The king does not actually give you meaning. Those are just things which help keep order. They're not actually the design and functionality of life. And now we're at a place where people do look to the nation for meaning. We do look to the law to supply us with how I feel. Like, again, one of the great things about America, recognizing that your rights come from God, meaning comes from God, not just the human law you craft. We've lost all of that. Everything has been polluted, and it's very, very destructive.
Have you ever heard of mindlessly consuming?
Yes.
I think mindlessly consuming plays into that too. You said sin is missing the mark, right?
Yeah.
And when you're mindlessly consuming, to me, that's a definition of missing the mark. You're just mindlessly consuming content that doesn't help you at all. In fact, it just brings you down. You're missing the mark of life when you're just watching TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels.
All right,
and watching content that doesn't help you.
So we're recording right now. Let's do a live analysis of the generations. Define consuming for me real clearly. You basically just did, but what do you think of when you think of consuming?
Well, you can be consuming anything. You can be consuming food. You can be consuming content. You could be consuming knowledge. But when you're mindlessly consuming all that stuff, it puts you in a state where you just think about nothing. And I think that's part of the reason why everyone's so asleep. Is they're just mindlessly consuming all day and all night. It's like a sleep gas, but on a massive scale.
Yeah. You're in the Matrix. I think it's funny. If you were to ask somebody who was 50, what do they think of with consuming or consumerism? They would answer buying clothes, buying a new car, buying a new phone. They would answer with a lot of material items. And we're to the point now where, like a lot of young people, when you were down the street at the private school, did every 16-year-old there drive and have a car?
I don't really know.
You don't know?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No. There's people older than me who don't drive and don't even have permits yet.
Yeah, see?
There's one kid, and I think he's a senior, doesn't even have his permit yet.
When I was in high school, I graduated in 2009, it would have been unheard of to not have your permit when you were 15. And the day you turned 16, you were clawing like a wild animal to get over there to the DMV to get that license. But now people don't even have the desire for a car, right? Which, again, the desire of a car is actually a lot bigger than just it's a material item. It's you have the freedom to navigate the world, to go out and see and do. You now have an opportunity to live in a real adventure and not just in the Matrix. And now, consumerism, the concept we talked about, people wanting to buy a bunch of, throwaway items that don't have lasting value, that's transferred over now to the digital world, where you talk about like knowledge or TikTok, where people just consume mindless trash. You're not even getting a physical item in return, right? Like, your consumption doesn't even leave you with the broken phone anymore to lust over, or you went out and you bought a bunch of clothes that no longer fit, or they're worn out or something like that, or maybe they've shrunk. You don't even have the leftover of the consumeristic item. Now you just have, I lost 4 hours looking at pictures that I'll never remember. But they did leave a negative seed in my brain. All the sinful temptations, they successfully planted the evil seeds. I now have no impulse control. I now go along with the lies. Like, I got all the negative consequences of it with nothing even remotely positive in return.
Well, more negative consequences of it include, horrible dopamine. You know what dopamine is, right?
Sure.
And when you're watching TikTok all day, it's really pleasing and it's really easy, and it makes your dopamine spike when you're about to do it. And dopamine naturally likes to regulate itself out, like a wave, if you will. And when it goes really, really, really high from watching TikTok, it's got to go all the way down to regulate itself out. And it has to go down for a while. And when it doesn't do that, you have things like serotonin and dopamine syndrome, where if you like take too much Molly on a night out, you can literally die because you have too much dopamine in your brain. And what I think mindlessly consuming does, it just causes that dopamine spike to go all the way up and up and up and up. And then when you're done, it just goes all the way back down. And you're just left feeling horrible.
Yeah.
You're left with like feeling nothing. And I don't know how many people are depressed today, clinically depressed. But I would say that's the main reason.
Yeah, 11 out of 100. 110 out of 1,000 Americans are on antidepressants. 110 out of 1,000. And the answer to that is not by going back to a counselor or, psychiatrist, psychologist. The answer is actually to get right with God. God can heal depression. If that has to be said, if we are in such a decrepit and feeble state of the church where people don't think God can restore the meaning in your life, then we need to have a lot of vicious excommunications. We need to have some excommunications, get some stuff out, and defeat these ideas, because God can heal people. God can give you meaning. But as long as you're trapped on the dopamine flow, you're not going to have meaning. And kind of going back to our earlier topic about stuff being designed by the general in hell, and places like Disney, TikTok, they're not just interested in giving you a quality item. Companies are not taking sort of the honor in their product and say, well, I want somebody to have a really great t-shirt so they'll love, my company. No, they want to sell something to you that gets you trapped in that stream. They want you to be an addict with them. They're here to milk you. And when you understand how a general in the army of hell is going to think, you want people that are throwing away their life for absolutely nothing in return. And we've now found a way to do that. We're at something darker. As crazy as this sounds, and I can't believe a holiness preacher is saying this, we're at a darker place than people just wanting to go out and buy, a new box of candles every day. Wanting to go out and have a new set of pots and pans and t-shirts and cars. We're at a darker place than that. You're now at the place where people are gluttons without restraint for nothing in return. Not a thing. All the negative, nothing even remotely positive. So yeah.
Is that all you wanted to cover in today's episode?
Maybe. There's more to unpack in that. The kind of going back to how the destruction of someone like Bill Cosby and Andrew Tate, it's a further attack on masculinity, which is a thing. Like, God made mankind male and female, and there are some distinct differences between that, but yet they are necessary to one another. It's amazing that we've somehow lost all of this. They're not optional. And when you see how we live in the matrix, whether it be flipping through the channels, flipping through the videos and post online, that takes away people's ability to have control over their life. Right? You don't have any impulse control. We know that pornography makes people unable to say no, which, you didn't even have to have a study to know that. Like, the more you do sin, the less you're able to say no to sin. Like, that's just how it works. The dog returns to its vomit, and the more you vomit, the more you're going to return to it. When we understand all of this stuff comes together to unmake people, to have you be unmade, to have you say, well, what's the point in growing up and getting married and having children? Like, all these are bad. I don't want to be made fun of. I don't want to be, working in a factory to make almost no money and not really being able to afford a house or car like my dad did, and then also to be made fun of everyone. Like, we have utterly broken society. And when people are broken and they are depressed, it is easy to separate them from God. And the ultimate conclusion in all of this is death. And may I underscore that by saying eternal death. That is the goal in all of this. The goal of the demoralization is eternal death, eternal separation from God, where there is no truth, there is no beauty, there is nothing that is good, and it's all dead. And you can see it everywhere.
I just think people just need to go outside and touch the grass.
They do need to go outside and touch the grass.
Because that's what you're made to do. Like you're not made to go sit in a chair for 5 hours a day and look at a screen. You got to go outside, and you gotta take an ice bath every single once in a while.
Yep.
I like to take ice baths a lot.
Yep.
And I'll notice that after I'm done doing it, because it's really hard to stay in the bathtub, I feel amazing afterwards.
Do you actually put ice in there, or is it just a cold bath?
Sometimes I put ice in there, but I put it on the coldest setting.
That is a based move. And Frankie doesn't want to be called based Frankie.
Well, it just doesn't sound good.
What if we say thoroughly based Frankie?
That sounds better. You should try taking an ice bath sometime.
Would it be a thoroughly based move?
It would.
It would. Do you even remember the ice bucket challenge when that was a thing?
What?
The ice bucket challenge?
No.
People would just pour a bucket of ice on people.
That's not even a challenge.
I know. It's pointless, but people were big into it. People will be big into pointless things. That's kind of what we do when separated from God. Because people are desperate for meaning, right? You can feel meaningful taking your bucket of ice and pouring it all over you. And sadly, there's more meaning in that than just watching someone else do it all day on TikTok. But yeah, getting back to actually touching grass is a really important thing you find there. God did make you to go outside. I love Sirach. Sirach 7 reminds you, don't be afraid of farm work, which God made for you to do. We do act like we're super smart when we don't have to do those things. But the trade-off for all those smart jobs, where the machines do the work for you, where you go into a factory, a lot of this stuff where it's kind of group managed and there's not a lot of dynamic life in what you're doing. It's very repetitive. It's very redundant. A lot of that, the trade-off is getting increasingly bad for the younger generations. We're being further and further detached from life and getting closer and closer to a really dark, dark place. So I guess we can end there. You good?
I say that's a good place to end.
I think so too. Well, thank you for joining us. Pastor J. Dylan Proctor and thoroughly based Frankie over there. God love you. Have a blessed day.
Signing out.